high side. Murphy shooting, save a rebound on the view.
Hey everyone, this is Casey. You are watching the Red River Duckman All Sports Network, and it is time for some college football Week 14 predictions. So it's rivalry week, and it's conference championship decider week. You already have one team clinched, and that's I think James Madison in the Sun Belt. I could be wrong about some others, but as far as I know, I think that is the only one. Oh, yeah, and Western Michigan, too, after they won on Tuesday night, I think. They're going to the MAC championship. We don't know their opponent yet. So instead of going through just the top 25, we're going to go through the races for the conference championships. We're going to start out with the smaller ones and then work our way up, because our top two teams in the country, in Ohio State and Indiana, that could be the Big Ten championship should the stars align. So, but you got to look at other races because there's still some hardware to be given out. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get into the conferences. The first one is Conference USA, and it's pretty simple. For Jacksonville State, Western Kentucky, and Kennesaw State, all three of them are win, and you're in. For Kennesaw State, they have the easier path. They're going to go up against Liberty. They may be only 1.5 point favorites, but I'm still going to say Kennesaw State takes this one. And should Kennesaw State lose, then they want Western Kentucky to lose. And Jacksonville State and Western Kentucky, they do play each other. And Jacksonville State already has a win over Kennesaw, so that works out well for them. In terms of the actual game, Western Kentucky comes in as 2.5 point favorites. But I'm pretty sure that Amherst Stadium in Jacksonville, Alabama is going to be a very tough environment to play in. I'm going to say that the Gamecocks take out Western Kentucky, and therefore the Conference USA Championship will be Kennesaw State and Jacksonville State. For the Mountain West, there are 7 teams that are still alive somehow, some way. And you have 2 that play each other with Boise State and Utah State over in Logan. For Utah State, they need a win and a New Mexico loss and a UNLV loss, and a finish with the top computer metrics among the 5 and 3 teams. As for Boise State, it's pretty simple. You need a win, and you need the Aztecs to win. But I think Boise State should be able to handle their own end of the bargain. They're 3-point favorites for good reason. And the game is going to be on CBS, so if you want Black Friday matinee, this would be a good one. I'm going to say Boise State takes down Utah State, so that eliminates one team. For Hawaii, they need a win and a Boise State loss and a New Mexico loss and a UNLV loss, and finish in the top computer metrics among 5 and 3 teams. And for Wyoming, for Hawaii, they're going up against Wyoming. And I do have a feeling that Hawaii should be able to take this one easily. You're already bowl eligible. As for Wyoming, they're done. They're 7.5 point favorites. You should be able to take down the Cowboys. But will that be enough to clinch them a spot in the conference championship? I don't think so. For Fresno State, they're looking for the same thing. They need a win. They need a Boise State loss. They need a New Mexico loss. They need a UNLV loss. And, of course, a finish in the top computer metrics among 5 and 3 teams. And they're going up against San Jose State. But they should be able to take down the Spartans, because the Spartans are 3-8. And Fresno State comes in as 3.5 point favorites. And so I'm going to say Fresno State takes down San Jose State. but I don't think it's going to be enough. For New Mexico, they have a simpler path, but they have multiple paths here. They could win, and Boise State somehow loses to Utah State. For New Mexico, they have simpler paths. One's a win and a Boise State loss to Utah State, a win and a finish in the top 2 in computer metrics among 6-2 teams, or Boise State losing and UNLV losing and finishing with the top computer metrics among 5-3 teams. And for New Mexico, they are going to be going up against San Diego State. So this is a big one because a win and a Boise State loss, and you're safe. So this is going to be a very, very tight game. And for San Diego State, it's simple. You got to win, and you're in. If not, you have to rely on either Boise State and UNLV to lose, or you finish in the top 2 in the computer metrics among 6-2 teams. But I think San Diego State should be able to come out and win. And for UNLV, it's simple. Win, and Boise State losing, and New Mexico losing, or a win and a San Diego State loss, and you finish in the top 2 in computer metrics among 6-2 teams, or Boise State and New Mexico both lose, and you finish in the top computer metrics among 5-3 teams. And UNLV will be going up against Nevada up at Reno, and you should be able to win that one handily. But I have a feeling, based on my predictions, I'm going to say that San Diego State and Boise State are going to be your conference championship for the Mountain West. So now let's head over to the Mid-American. Let's look at some action. Like we mentioned earlier, Western Michigan already booked their ticket to Detroit with a 31-21 win over Eastern Michigan. So the Broncos are going to be in the conference championship. Now we need to know who they are going to be facing. And it's a big, big mess. For Toledo, it's simple. Win, you're in. For Miami of Ohio, win. And if the Chippewas are able to beat the Rockets, you are in. For Ohio, they have to win on Black Friday. You need Northern Illinois to win on Black Friday. You need Miami of Ohio to lose on Saturday. And you need Central Michigan to win on Saturday. But you also need to beat the Chips in team rating score metric in order to get in. I know that was a lot to take in. But yeah, 4 teams are still alive for that last spot in the MAC championship against Western Michigan. And Toledo and Central Michigan, they do play each other, but we're going to get to that game later. We're going to talk about Miami of Ohio and then Ohio. So Ohio will be facing off against Buffalo. The Bulls are going to be fighting to be bowl eligible. And Ohio comes in as 7-point favorites. But I think they should be able to do it. I'm going to say Ohio takes out Buffalo and spoils senior day for the Bulls on Friday. And that would leave the Bobcats with a very long wait. Unless Northern Illinois are able to beat Kent State, because that's who Northern Illinois faces. If that happens, then Ohio will be scoreboard watching on Saturday. For Miami of Ohio, they're taking on Ball State, a team that just lost bowl eligibility. And the Red Hawks come in as 17.5-point favorites. And for a quick prediction, I'm going to say Miami of Ohio takes out Ball State. So that would eliminate Ohio from the race. And now, the game to decide it all, Toledo and Central Michigan up at Mount Pleasant. Toledo comes in as 10.5-point favorites. Central Michigan, they've been in this position before. And Toledo, they've also been in this position before. They should have been on the road to Detroit last year, but back-to-back losses to end the year really hurt their chances. But I'm going to say Toledo finally gets it done and takes out Central Michigan. So therefore, I think your MAC championship is going to be Western Michigan and Toledo up at Detroit. Now that I remember, it's very, very important we don't leave out the Sun Belt because we got James Madison taking on Coastal Carolina, but we won't be doing predictions for that game because James Madison already booked their ticket to the Sun Belt Championship by clinching the East Division. And so we're going to see who wins the Sun Belt West Division. We got Southern Miss and Troy in Hattiesburg. Guess what? These two teams play each other. So this is a de facto Sun Belt semifinal game. And the winner will likely be traveling to James Madison for the Sun Belt Championship. Because keep in mind, it is held at a campus site. Both teams set 7-4. Southern Miss, a 6.5-point favorites. But they did lose to Arkansas. They did lose to Texas State and South Alabama going into this. So they have been on the decline. And looking at Troy, they've also lost back-to-back games with Arkansas State and Old Dominion, but they did pick up a win over Georgia State going into the week. The question is, who is going to go in? And I think I'm going to see an upset. I think it's going to be Troy taking out Southern Miss. And so the Sun Belt Championship, my predictions are going to be James Madison versus Troy. And now we have the American. And this has been the top of the group of 5 all year long. And it holds no different this week. We do have 5 teams still eligible for the AAC championship. And one of those happens to be East Carolina. They need a win and both Tulane and North Texas to lose, and they have to finish in the top 2 in the composite computer average among 6 and 2 teams. And for East Carolina, they are taking on Florida Atlantic, a team that just lost bowl eligibility. They come in as 7-point favorites, but for this one, I'm going to say that FAU takes out East Carolina and eliminates them from any consideration. And we've talked about this team so much this year, and that's South Florida. Now they're in trouble. They also got to rely on Tulane and North Texas to lose, and they have to finish in the highest composite computer average among 6 and 2 teams. And for South Florida, they have to take on Food. They got to take on Rice. But I don't think you're going to lose to Food. I'm going to say South Florida takes out Rice, and now you have to rely on computer rankings and Tulane and North Texas losing. And at the time of this recording, Navy just won their game against Memphis 28-17. So now they have just one path, and pretty simple. They need either Tulane or North Texas losing, because those are the top 2 teams, and those are the 2 with win and in scenarios. And the good news is both of them are playing at home. That's good news for both Tulane and North Texas. For the Mean Green, they are taking on Temple. They come in as 20.5-point favorites, and I think they should be able to handle them. I'm going to say North Texas takes out Temple. So there's one half of the American Championship, and the only one that's ranked is Tulane, and they are taking on Charlotte. And they should also win that game. Tulane takes out Charlotte. Therefore, I think it's going to stay the same. Tulane and North Texas take out both of their opponents, and they will move on to the American Championship. Okay, let's talk about the ACC because, by God, what is going on in that conference? Because Georgia Tech, they couldn't hold their spot if their lives depended on it, and Miami is so down low in the standings that they might not even make the conference championship at all, despite being the highest ranked ACC team in the rankings. But regardless, we're going to go over it. The simplest one, it's Georgia Tech. They're going up against Georgia. Their conference schedule's already done. So you got some scenarios. You got Pitt winning and Virginia and SMU both losing, and there's three scenarios with a Miami win and an SMU loss and a Duke loss. And then you have Virginia, NC State, and BC, and North Carolina winning. And you got to finish higher than Miami and SMU in the Sports Source Analytics ranking. But I do have a feeling that won't happen. So I'm just going to eliminate Georgia Tech right on the spot. For Miami, there are different scenarios. There's a whole list of them. I'm going to post screenshots over on ESPN. They're taking on Pittsburgh this week, 9-2 versus 8-3, 12 versus 22 in the country. And Miami comes in as 7-point favorites. But the 12th ranked Hurricanes need more help than it should take. And with that, I'm going to say that Miami is going to win because of one simple reason. The College Football Playoff Committee ranked Pitt. And people need to know that bad things happen when you rank Pittsburgh. They either collapse and it doesn't look pretty. And for Pittsburgh, they either clinch it with a win or a UVA loss or a win and an SMU loss. But I think Pittsburgh, they made a mistake of being ranked, so that'll eliminate them from the spot. For Duke, they are going up against Wake Forest, and they can win and Pitt losing. So there you go. And that will require then an SMU loss or Virginia losing and UNC winning, aka North Carolina, or Virginia losing, NC State winning, and finishing higher than Miami in the Sports Source Analytics ranking. I do see them winning. And so the Devils will wait. And for SMU, they are taking on California. And for SMU, it's simple. Win, you're in. Pittsburgh loses, Duke loses, and Virginia and the Tar Heels both win, you're in. And there's a whole lot of rankings that require the sports. And there's a whole lot of scenarios that require the Sports Source Analytics ranking. So I'm just going to eliminate the middleman. And I'm going to say SMU books a return trip to Charlotte. They come into California as 13.5-point favorites. And I'm going to say the Mustangs earn themselves a return trip to Charlotte. For Virginia, it's either win and you're in, or you got to rely on SMU losing, Pitt losing, and UNC winning. And guess what? They're facing off against Virginia Tech. They're still relying on James Franklin's spirit, but I don't think it's going to happen. I'm going to say Virginia takes out Virginia Tech. And therefore, I think your ACC championship will be Virginia and SMU. Should Pittsburgh get in, I'm going to laugh hysterically. All right, Big 12, thank you for making things simpler. Because 4 teams are still left, and that's Texas Tech, BYU, Arizona State, and then Utah. For Utah, it's a very complicated path, and you only have one. You need a win, you need Texas Tech to lose, and you need both BYU and Arizona State winning. For why? For what reason? I don't know. Utah, will be facing off against Kansas over in Lawrence. And Utah does come in as 10.5-point favorites, but Kansas is going to be fighting to become bowl eligible. I just don't see it happening. I'm going to say Utah takes out Kansas, and they will be going scoreboard watching after Friday afternoon. And for Arizona State, you either win the showdown in the desert and BYU losing, or you win the desert shootout and Texas Tech and Utah both lose. And the defending Big 12 champions are going off against Arizona. Like I mentioned, the showdown in the desert. And this is in Tempe. And Arizona is 1.5-point favorites, but this spells a very big showdown. And I think that Arizona State will come out on top. And they will be going scoreboard watching along with Utah. And so the top two, Texas Tech and BYU. As of right now, BYU is the first team out. So it's very, very important that they get in to the Big 12 championship if they want a chance to prove themselves and get themselves locked in. And they will be hosting UCF, a team fighting to be bowl eligible. You're 17.5-point favorites, but I think BYU does get it done. You needed a win or an Arizona State loss or a Texas Tech and Arizona State win. But by simply winning and getting in, I'm going to say BYU goes into the Big 12 championship. And then you have Texas Tech playing hope, actually traveling to West Virginia. They're already bowl ineligible, so they could play spoiler, but Texas Tech riding with a lot of momentum, no pun intended, as 23.5-point favorites. I just don't see it happening. I'm going to say Texas Tech takes out the Mountaineers. Therefore, the Big 12 championship will be Texas Tech and BYU. We're expecting a big, big matchup. And now we head to the Big 10. It's very, very simple for Indiana. They play on Friday against Purdue. Win, and you're in. Ohio State loses, and you're in. But I think Indiana will eliminate the middleman against Purdue and just say, well, we'll take care of it ourselves. I'm going to say Indiana takes down Purdue. Yes, it's a rivalry game, but Purdue is 2-9. Let's let them have their fun. And now, Indiana will await their next opponent. And it would be either Ohio State, Oregon, and Michigan. Yes, the game has become an elimination game, but we'll get to that later. Let's talk about Oregon's game against Washington, because if you saw Ohio State play Washington later in the year, it shows that Washington is not a team to overlook. They will burn you if you are not careful. But I have a feeling that Oregon's going to apply pressure. And with that, all they need is Ohio State to lose, and they have a chance to repeat as Big Ten champions. And with that, for Ohio State, simple. Win, and you're in. And because I predicted Oregon winning, you really need to win. For Michigan, you needed a win, and Indiana or Oregon losing. So guess what? This has become a must-win for both of them, according to my predictions. And for right now, Ohio State rolls in as 10-point favorites. But as we learned last year, anything can happen in this rivalry. Make one mistake, and the other team will burn you. And for Ohio State, there were plenty of mistakes. They couldn't stop anybody on third down, costly turnovers, missed field goals. And you put up more fight when Michigan was planting a flag on Ohio Stadium's turf than you did the whole 3 hours of play. And hopefully, Ryan Day has had that score bug sewn on the inside of his eyelids, so he never had a peaceful wink of sleep for all of this year. He couldn't even celebrate the national championship because he had that scorebook stitched on the inside of his eyelids. It was haunting him forever whenever he closed his eyes. So, with that being said, I'm going to say Ohio State takes out Michigan. This time I'm going my heart over my mind. I'm hoping that Ohio State can finally get it done up at the big house. And with that, I'm sticking with Ohio State and Indiana being in the Big Ten championship. Now we head on over to the SEC. And let's just say it's a bit chaotic. Alabama, Texas A&M, Georgia, and Ole Miss are the only teams left in the race. And for Ole Miss, they have the toughest path. They got to win the Egg Bowl against Mississippi State, and you need Texas A&M to lose in the Lone Star Showdown against Texas, and you need Alabama to lose to Auburn over at Jordan-Hare in the Iron Bowl. And for Ole Miss, that game will be in Starkville with the Bulldogs team looking to become bowl eligible. And Ole Miss, they come into the game as only 7-point favorites. This is the Egg Bowl. Anything can happen. Because there have been many instances where many of these teams have already sabotaged their paths into the college football playoff. You saw that with Mississippi State in the very first year, 2014. But I'm going to say that Ole Miss is going to take out Mississippi State, and it sets up a path where they need Texas A&M and Alabama to lose. Georgia, they're not playing an SEC game this year. The SEC game this week, they are done because they're facing off against an ACC team in Georgia Tech in a game of clean old-fashioned hate. But they do have a scenario here, and it's Alabama losing or Texas A&M losing. So, yeah, the Bulldogs, they don't control their own destiny. They got to rely on one of these teams to lose. And for Texas A&M, they're traveling to Austin to take on the Texas Longhorns. Of course, Texas, they won't be able to make it to the SEC championship, but they can play spoiler, and they're only 2.5-point underdogs. And I have a feeling that Texas is going to do it. I'm going to say the Longhorns take out Texas A&M, and therefore you have to see Georgia in the SEC championship again. My apologies. And for Alabama, it's simple. Win, and you're in. And I will say that Alabama goes in and wins. And with that, Alabama and Georgia are going to be your SEC championship again. Sorry, I'll make the rules. I just do predictions. So, I hope you guys are ready for conference championships. I sure am. But of course, we have rivalry week with some de facto semifinal games. It's going to be fun. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please feel free to like, comment, share this with your friends, subscribe to the Red River Duckman All Sports Network. I will make an announcement for predictions going forward. I'm going to be releasing them in shorts with one game at a time because the conference championships, they deserve so much attention. And it's going to be impossible to put all the chaos into one video, even though I did try for 14 weeks. But that's going to do it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Until we meet again, I will see you all in the next one. Take care, and let's enjoy some college